Thanks for listening to another episode of the Gifted Performance Podcast. If you're listening or watching on YouTube, make sure you subscribe, as well as hitting the like button and the notification bell so you never miss a video. If you prefer audio format, search Gifted Performance on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, or your favorite podcasting service, and subscribe today. Make sure you also rate and review the podcast, as that helps us out tremendously. Enjoy the podcast and stay gifted. Welcome back, guys. Another episode of the GPP, the Gifted Performance Podcast, where we give you the knowledge and practical takeaways to improve your own general physical preparedness. Mike has made his usual, what is that face? That's just like the beefed up trap gang?
That's just my face.
I don't know what you're talking about. That's just what I look like. And we are also joined by a true beefed up trap gang overlord, Ian Bell himself. Ian, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, y'all. It's an honor to be on the podcast. Feeling good. Just got my second dose of the Pfizer, so officially Pfizer Poppy, all vaccinated up.
The man is 5G ready, 5G capable. Mike, how do you know Ian? How did you guys originally connect or link up or start talking?
So I know Ian because when I was in PT school in San Antonio, I just happened to live around the corner, basically from this. I think you're repping the shirt right now, Ian. Actually, the Olympic gym, the original Olympic gym, which Ian can tell you way more about than I can. But I mean, that place is like an antique. It makes me sad that it's like not around anymore because it was like, a bunch of like strong people, a bunch of like legitimate like drifters, a bunch of like old school bodybuilders was kind of like the intersection that was going on there. And yeah, that was where Ian and the rest of the gang kind of trained. And so naturally I kind of fell in with them and was like, well, obviously Ian Bell trains here, so I'm gonna train here too. And yeah, the rest was kind of history, man.
So, that kind of lets the secret out. If you couldn't tell by the delts right there, Ian has been known to lift some weights, and those weights that he hoists against the force of gravity are quite heavy. So Ian, tell us a little bit about yourself, your history in the sport of powerlifting, and maybe a little bit about how you got into lifting in general.
Yeah, I've been lifting, I guess, for the past 16 years. Started when I was like 12, so pretty young. My dad was also a lifter. Gene Bell, old school guy, lots of world records, lots of world championships. In my opinion, one of the best lifters ever. But my dad didn't really like force me into lifting like a lot of other people. I started lifting to get ready for football. And I played a lot of different sports growing up: football, basketball, tennis, wrestling, martial arts. I did a lot of different things. But when I started lifting weights for football, I noticed like I'm kind of strong. I was already aware of what lifting was, and I was like, I might as well try it out. And so I took it pretty slow, maybe those first 4 years. But then when I turned 16, and in Texas, powerlifting is a pretty big deal. I think THSPA is the second biggest powerlifting organization in the country, only behind USA Powerlifting. So when I turned 16, I was like, you know what? I really want to be competitive in this. I want to win a state title. And that's when I started taking it seriously and just kind of like really went at it from 16 on until now. And so still, like to this day, my 2 high school state titles are like my most cherished possessions. But won those and then went to Sub-Junior Worlds, won that. I've won, I think, 3 or 4 Junior World titles, set a couple Junior World records, Open World records, and currently have the Open World record for equipped deadlift in the 93s. And yeah.
So I think we're going to talk about Texas a little bit later, but just a quick aside for you. Why do you think it is that in Texas that like sports like powerlifting, sports like football are so built into the culture there? What is it in the water? You guys got extra fluoride in your water or something? What is it about the state of Texas that that kind of like drives people to gravitate towards those sports, you think?
I think it's, well, like for me, it's just, I don't know. I think it's just part of the culture, right? And so there's just like sports is such an important part, I think, of both Texas culture and Southern culture, that it's just kind of like an understanding. Like once you get to school, you start playing sports, right? And everybody around you is doing it, so it's also like you wanna have a sense of belonging with your friends and with your community, so you just play sports. I didn't even like football, but I played football because all my friends played football. And I think the other side of that is also there's so much money that goes into sports and into funding athletic departments and staffs and all these things that go into creating like a successful sports program. So I think that's kind of the two sides of it.
Mike, get something to add there?
Yeah, I was just gonna say that I think it's so awesome that, with all of like the and you probably hear my cat in the background. I'm sorry. I don't know if there's anything I can do about that. But I think it's so awesome with like all of like the titles and stuff that you've won, all that you've accomplished, that you still look back on like the high school state titles and stuff like that. And I mean, I think it speaks to something pretty pure about it. It's like those high school sports, it's different. It kind of gives me those like Friday Night Lights vibes, which, man, that's just awesome. I love it.
Yeah, I mean, I check every single year. I check to see if there's going to be a kid that breaks my records from high school. And this past year, a kid broke my total record, which I had to have, just a day of, mourning for sure. But yeah, I mean, those state records and those state championships still super close to my heart.
How many Tanya Harding moments did you have in your mind when you saw that kid coming up towards your record? Did you have like the baseball bat, the steel pipe ready for the kneecaps?
I mean, absolutely. I thought it to cross my mind. Like I might have to, bust a miner's kneecaps, which I'm sure is a felony. But no, I was excited to see somebody break the record. It had stood for 11 years, so it was about that time. And the kid is strong. I can't remember his name off the top of my head. I think his first name is Slade Harris, I believe, in the 198s. And he totaled like 1830 at 198. He's 18 years old, which is just insane. So I'm glad to see somebody. I'm always glad to see a record broke, because that just means people are getting stronger and the sport is advancing in itself. But when I first saw his name, I was like, you know what? I might have to drive down to Abilene and make something happen.
I think broken records as a whole, despite the fact that it was probably a bittersweet moment for you watching your record fall, it's a good thing because it pushes the sport forward. It's a sign that the sport continues to drive forward. You see some of these Olympic sports that haven't had world records broken since like the 60s or the 70s, and it's kind of like a stagnant mindset. But on the topic of, breaking records, your last meet, it ended or concluded with an American record deadlift. Walk us through that last meet. How was your training leading up to the meet? How was game day? And how hyped were you after that last deadlift?
So training up to the meet, it went okay, I would say. I was listening to y'all's podcast with Ashton. He was saying like his training felt average, like going into the meet. And my training felt very average. And I know if my training feels good, then I'm going to have a shitty meet. Like it's never a good meet anytime my training is good. But this time I did have some bench PRs throughout training, so my bench felt good, but my deadlift felt terrible throughout the whole training cycle. And my squat felt okay, but I was having some troubles just like with technique and hitting depth and just kind of working around my hip issues with my squat. But really I just kind of hopped into this meet. I was still kind of like, I didn't really do a lot during the early part of the pandemic, and I put on a lot of pandemic weight. And so I was just trying to get down from that, trying to get back in shape, really taking things slow. And my dad was like, I remember I was, having lunch with my dad, and he was like, you know what? You look fat. You need to do a meet. And I was like, first, and second, I was like, you know what? That might be a good idea. So then I just kind of signed up for this meet, and I think gave myself 8 weeks to get ready for it. And yeah, I mean, the squat just kept moving and moving and moving throughout the weeks. And I think I really changed my training this time where I've cut down a lot of volume. I used to, when I was training equipment, I would do, 5 sets of triples with 85% half suit, which, squatting half suit is pretty much akin to squatting raw. It's like raw times 1.5. And so that was a lot of volume on my body. And I think when I was 20, 21, 22, like that worked. Like I could handle that workload. But now I notice like I can only do doubles and singles straps up, and I'm not going to get weaker doing that. I think my whole mindset before was like, I got to do a shit ton of volume all the time in order to be strong, in order to be ready for the meet. But changing that up and changing it more to like how my body is right now, I think helped a lot. But when I got to the meet, I was like, you know what, you're just going to let it ride. And I'm not really like into calling my own numbers or anything like that. When I get to a meet, I give my people the game plan and just let them carry it out as they see fit. Because I'll always be too conservative in calling my own numbers. And my dad is the complete opposite. He'll just let that shit ride. So I wasn't expecting to squat over 840. But, my dad put on 865 for the last attempt. And it was the squat that felt the best that day. I was pretty sure I was going to have a good bench day. In training, I had hit 584, what I hit at the meet. I hit that in training, and I was like, there's no way I hit that in the meet, after squatting 3 times. Let's shoot for 573. We just loaded it up, went 584. The deadlift was what I was the most worried about, for sure. And I'm always worried when I would go to my first deadlift opener. I'm just like, man, like, what if it feels heavy? What is that going to mean? Blah, blah, blah. But I was able to calm down, and, the opener flew like the opener always flies. And then we jumped to the American record, and I went 120s at this meet because I didn't feel like cutting. I was still just trying to slowly work my weight down, and it didn't mean anything to cut for this meet. And there was a 120 American record just kind of sitting there that hadn't been touched since '96. I think Anthony Stewart held it, Anthony Bull Stewart. So I was like, you know what, that's there for the taking, might as well. So we chipped that, and that felt great. And then we did a big jump to 390, I believe, 390 keys, which I think is around the world record for the 105s, about 860. So yeah, I think my dad just threw it on there just to see, like, can we pull it? Like, is it there? How close are we? And so I got that maybe about 3/4 of the way and just couldn't lock out my hips on that last one. But all in all, I was pretty satisfied. It was a good meet.
So that's awesome. And Ryan, if you don't mind, I'm just going to jump ahead because I think this is like kind of a natural segue. Because Ian, you mentioned that when your training feels good, you have a bad meet. So like what I want to ask about is what kind of goes into your mentality preparing for a meet, so like both in training and in competition. And I asked this because I remember one time we were preparing for I forget the name, like Iron Wars or something like that in San Antonio. We were both gonna compete in that meet, and I remember like seeing you in the gym and like straight up, you were not having a good prep. Like you were not squatting very much. I don't think I ever saw you bench. I think I maybe saw you pull a couple of singles, and I was just like, oh geez, like what's happening there? Like yikes. And like this is very cringe to say, but I was like, dude, am I gonna like beat Ian Bell in this like local meet? Like that'd be kind of cool. Fast forward, I did not. I think you like benched like a random like 20-pound PR. You squatted like 6 something, and this is all raw, of course. And then had like an insane. You pulled conventional like something like 100 pounds more than me or something like that. So it like no like not bothered by that, but I was just like so amazed. I was like, holy crap, this dude had, from what I could tell at least, not very good preparation. Like I think you're probably dealing with some injuries at the time and stuff too. And then come meet day, it was like you flipped a switch. You just like turned it on and go for it. Is that you? Are you just built different, or have you kind of like had to foster that like over time, had to get better at flipping the switch?
I think it's a little bit of both. I always, I don't know, I compare a lot of things to playing sports. I guess in like getting ready for meets and just training in general too. Every time I'm training, it's a hard training session. I always tell myself, you know what? This is not harder than two-a-days. This is not harder than waking up at 4 o'clock in the morning and then playing football for 4 hours. Or this is not harder than, wearing pads in 103-degree weather. So I think that kind of helps put things into perspective. But also, I don't know, I'm really good I think, at turning on the switch. I've always kind of been like a gamer. I've always been like a meet day lifter, not very much all the time. Like I'm gonna hit all my PRs in the gym. I usually don't hit PRs in the gym, and I think that's also a way of how I structure my training, and how my dad really structured my training when I was younger. Is we always want to save it for the platform because that's where it's gonna count. I think there's not a lot more things that are deflating than hitting a PR in the gym and then not being able to reproduce that on the platform. So yeah, I feel like it's something that I've worked on, as I've gotten older. I think the thing that I've really fostered is like how to turn that off when I'm at the meet. Because sometimes when I was younger, I'd get so like hyped up and like so ready that like I would just like run out of steam like after my first deadlift and just be gassed just because like my adrenaline is just like going and going and going. And I think it was my dad or somebody who told me like you only have so much adrenaline, like literally like in your body that you can use throughout a meet. So you have to like turn it on and turn it back off so you can save it for, full meet, especially at a local meet that's going to be like 5 or 6 hours or something like that. So I think that's a skill that I've gotten a lot better at as I've been older. I mean, I used to get so geeked up, I'd pass out and shit. At the Arnold, I passed out twice at the Arnold deadlifting just because like I'm so hype. And I was like, you know what? It's probably not good to be unconscious while holding 800 pounds. Some would say.
Can we hold ASAP Ferg accountable for this, like for your
Absolutely.
health? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, ASAP Ferg is definitely to blame for being unconscious at the Arnold.
What's the ASAP Ferg song of choice? I mean, are we going new level? Are we going with something new? A little Marilyn Manson? What are we going with here?
We're going with Work remix.
Oof. Oh, that's dangerous. Oh, that's dangerous.
I think my all-time favorite, it has to be Dump Dump by A$AP Ferg, first album, which is, I mean, that's a hard song. That's not something you want to usually play out in public. But it's good in the headphones before lifting.
No, something that you said that I actually want to highlight two things here. I'm gonna flip a quick question to Mike Taylor here. He better be ready for it. But the first thing that I want to give you props for that you said was when you think about training, because I think that a lot of people, they take to the social meds and they like to complain about their training and how hard their training is. And what I wanted to kind of applaud you for was your mentality around training, and it's not harder than some other lived experience that you have. Like, because that really reframes the training session to be like, listen, like I can still go in here and I can give this my best. It's not harder than something that I've made it through before. I think that's super refreshing to hear, and I'm glad you said that because I think it's a really valuable lesson. The second point, and I want to throw it at Mike, because you said when I have my worst training, I have my best meets. And something I hear Mike and Tom talk about all the time is momentum. So the momentum around training, as in you build momentum into the meet, training gets progressively better as you go, and you stack up these victories, and then you perform at your best. From how you've said it, it sounds like taking L's in training, just here, sir, hold this L, and then all of a sudden on meet day, you had this phenomenal performance. So Mike, I want to hear kind of how you interpret this and how this lines up with your mentality about like training momentum.
Well, so as you did here, he didn't deny being like built different. So that probably has something to do with it. But no, for real though, I think part of it has to do with reframing it. I think that, like he says, maybe things not feeling the best, but like not letting that spiral out of control. So like, even though training has been like not good, you haven't let it become like negative momentum either, where you're just like, oh crap, man, am I gonna bomb at this freaking meet, man? Oh God. And you kind of like stay with it, and you kind of remember like, okay, yeah, because you played high school football in Texas, which is like a rite of passage basically. And, you just understand that like, yeah, they're like harder things, and, okay, this isn't the best. But, one thing also that I can speak to, because Ian's dad, Gene, tried to tell me this, I was still not really ready to listen at the time. But I remember I was like hitting like RPE 10s like 2 weeks out from this meet. Like I maxed my squat. I squat like 585. I was like, for sure, 600 on meet day. It's going to be there. Absolutely. And he was like, you really should probably try to leave some. And I was like, oh yeah, I know, sir. But like, I got this program, like I'm good. And then like, I didn't squat 600 at the meet. Right. So I was like, maybe there's something to that. So I think, Ian probably also has kind of learned to really trust his training, even when it's not on fire. He knows that, the strength will be there on game day when it counts. And, I'd also probably like to ask Ian, like, I mean, you've competed in a lot of powerlifting meets, probably like 9 or 10 times more than I have. I mean, have you ever had like a bad one? I would assume the answer is yes. So like, it doesn't always go in your favor, but, you still get back up and compete again, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think to get back to like the earlier questions, I think all the training I think is about mindset and framing. I think it has to be about that. And because you can always find something that isn't going well, and if you want to hyper focus on that, or if you want to let that paint the picture of what your training cycle has been, then it's not gonna be good, right? And you're gonna go into the meet with a negative mindset, not believing in yourself and believing what you're capable of. When I say my training hasn't been good, I think it's also me not trying to set too high of expectations. So I think I've done that before, where I've like set the bar way, way, way too high, and then if the meet doesn't go perfect, I'm deflated after that. So I think I try to find like a middle ground of like, you know what, things are feeling okay, and like what you were saying about trusting your training, I wholeheartedly believe in that. That even if things are going exactly right, or you have to change some things throughout the training day or throughout the cycle, trusting in that training and knowing that whatever you did before is going to produce the results that you want on meet day, but you have to trust in it, and not freak out when one little thing goes wrong or a couple things go wrong, but just to trust in it and be patient. But yeah, I've had bad meets. I've had bad meets. There was a couple years where I was having trouble getting 2 benches in a meet, just having a hard time touching, or just wasn't strong enough to press out a bench. My best training cycle leading up to a meet, that meet is the only meet that I bombed out in. So which is, I don't know, maybe it's just kind of like a personal thing. Like if my training is too good, the meet's not going to be good. I don't have a lot of data for that, but my last junior worlds, I went into the training. I had like all these goals. I was like, I'm going to break the squat record. I'm going to break the deadlift record. I'm going to break the total record. Like it's all there. It's my last one. I'm going to put these records out of reach, blah, 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 blah. Training was going great. Got to the meet, and then things just didn't go my way. Refereeing didn't go my way, and I'm out of the squat. So I think that's probably like, that was like a big turning point for me in how I approach training, and how I try to keep myself just kind of in the middle, not to the point where like I'm not believing in my own strength, but also not to the point where I'm just like, cocky going into a meet where I can't keep myself humble. So yeah, and I feel like that's where I'm at now. Like I have like this range of like what I can hit going into a meet, but even knowing that sometimes I can go above that range, and I'm capable of doing that.
To get back to like a Texas high school football analogy, what that kind of sounds like to me is, you pick up a first down or hit like a big explosive play, great. Next play. If you you fumble the ball, like, okay, that sucks, but defense, next play. You know what I mean? So, yeah, I like that.
Yeah, it's definitely having a short memory for sure. And even, I think that's important throughout a training cycle. when I was younger, I used to get really down on myself if I had a bad day. Like it would take me like 2 days to like get over that and then be able to come into the gym with a fresh perspective. But I think as I gotten older, like I've reduced that time as much as I can. And I think I do a lot of things mentally to be able to do that. Just through like, listening to different things or meditating or journaling or doing a lot of other things just to kind of like process and then, shift my perspective and reset myself going into the next day. But especially on meet day, I mean, if you go 1 for 3 for squats, you can't carry that into bench because if you do, you're going to bomb out. You're going to go 1 for 3 for bench. There's always time and opportunity to make it back up, or at least to start fresh, or to end on a good note, or whatever euphemism you want to use. And I don't like to waste those opportunities.
Earlier on in our recording here in our pod, you mentioned some stuff about your training leading into the last meet. I believe you said half suit, straps up. I think you even mentioned a bench shirt. And I didn't want to alarm anyone at the time, but all the crosses that are hanging in my house turned upside down and black cats started yowling because what you had done is you had just mentioned Satan's barbell sport, which was equipped powerlifting, right? Am I characterizing that correctly?
Yes, the devil's lifting.
Yeah. So our viewers and our listeners right now, put your flame beanies on, crank the Metallica to 11, because we're having a conversation about equipped powerlifting. So, Ian, I'm a 5-year-old. Explain to me what equipped powerlifting is, the divisions, the equipment, all of that.
Yeah, so equipped powerlifting, at least the division that I compete in, is single ply lifting. So just one ply of material. You have squat suits, right, that are made out of like a polyester type material, bench shirts made out of the same thing, and deadlift suits that are made out of the same type of material. The way that it works, basically, the analogy I always use in talking to new lifters or younger lifters is it kind of works like a rubber band. So as you kind of pull that rubber band back, right, you're kind of storing up this energy, and then when you let it go, it just kind of converts to the kinetic energy, just kind of flies. So as you're squatting in the hole on your descent, you're kind of storing up that energy in the suit, and then you hit the hole and you're getting that rebound from the suit. And so the suits work basically in the same way for each of the lifts, is giving you support and assistance out of the hole for each lift. So on the bench, off your chest, out the hole in the squat, and at the bottom of the deadlift.
So I just like put this on and squat like 200 more pounds than I normally do, right? Like just straight away. Play. Yeah, that's what I'm hearing.
Yeah, absolutely. No. So there's a little bit of adjustment to using the suit. I think the big thing that people run into when they're using equipment is the equipment wants to collapse you in at all times. So it wants to collapse your knees, it wants to collapse your hips. When you're benching, it wants to just kind of fold you down and kind of collapse your arch. When you're deadlifting, it wants you to lift, hunched over. So you're having to fight against the equipment to get to your regular technique to be able to get the most efficient use out of the gear. There's also the point of kind of hitting the competition standards of, touching your chest when you're wearing a bench shirt and hidden depth when you're wearing a squat suit and locking all the way out when you're wearing a deadlift suit. And then it's also kind of figuring out like what's the right weight for you, and what it's going to take and what you can handle in wearing the suit. What different fit kind of fits you best. If you need tighter legs, if you need tighter hips, or if you need tighter straps. But it takes a little bit of getting used to. And you got to be a special type of crazy, I would say. A special type of, red flame beanie crazy. Wear some of these because the pressure I think is the most common thing I hear people complain about. Like that pressure when you have a suit on, you have knee wraps on, you have a belt on. People pop blood vessels in their eye all the time, wearing equipped. It happens in Raw too, but I've seen it more frequently wearing gear. Like that's a lot of pressure in the hole. It's not comfortable. It doesn't feel good. Um, but I think it takes a lot more skill to be able to finesse that gear in a way that's going to help you. Because I know a lot of people put on gear and they just can't lift in it because they can't make it work for them. They can't fight the pressure, can't fight the pain, can't get their technique right and fight against the suit to be able to lift how they normally lift, and they kind of give up on it. But I think if anybody's a powerlifter, they got to try equip lifting because like that's in my opinion, that's the true essence of what powerlifting is and how it started.
Mike, put the suit on.
Do it.
I know. I feel like I really missed a big opportunity to do it because one thing I'd be interested to hear Ian's take on this was that like when I lifted out in Texas at Olympic Gym and Texas Strength Systems, and there's like a lot of people compete like lifting equipped out there still. Okay, don't see anything like that in Florida or really anywhere else that I've been, honestly. So it seems to me like, obviously we all heard about, Mike Teixeira would like do it himself, like just hanging by like a barbell in his garage, like get in the suit and stuff. But I mean, it kind of seems like it does take like a team effort to really properly train in equipment. Would you say that's correct, Ian?
Yeah, absolutely. Especially if you're just starting out, if you never used gear before, like you got to find a crew of people who know what they're doing. Which very much like when I first started out lifting, like I guess like the mid 2000s, early 2000s, like that's how you got into powerlifting. Like you walked into a gym, you saw who the powerlifters were, and you asked very nicely if you could join them and learn from them. And then eventually, after a couple weeks, after you proved yourself, they throw you into gear and start teaching you how to use that. But it's always been like a big kind of community thing. Like I got to be around 4 or 5 men and women who know what they're doing to help wrap my knees, help put my straps on, to help spot and load and all these things, really to keep you safe so you don't fold like a lawn chair. But yeah, I feel like it's important to have at least 2 people who know what they're doing.
Yeah. And I remember even, I can't think of like specific names, but I remember I would like come into the gym some days and I'd see someone there and be like, oh, hey man, what are you training today? And you'd be like, oh, I'm not training. I'm just here to like load or like wrap knees. And just be like, huh? Like it's like that, you're there for your crew, which I think was really cool. Different type of vibe for sure.
I'm interested to hear. No, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I'm in the gym 7 days a week, but I'm only training 4 days a week. Sometimes I'll just come to the gym to wrap knees or to spot and load or to just slap somebody on their traps. Yeah, I think that's the fun part about equip lifting. It's very much you're all in it together. Whether you're training or you're not training, you're kind of doing the same meet.
Handshake emoji for sure. Big handshake emoji. So I'm actually interested to hear kind of the implementation of equipment in training. When in terms of proximity to a meet, you bring in equipment, how frequently you're training in it, how frequently you're training without it. What does that look like?
So I'm usually in gear for anywhere between 6 to 8 weeks. And so, I kind of give myself like an acclimation period to the gear because when I'm not training for an equipped meet, like I'm training raw. So most of the year I'm just training raw. But there's kind of an acclimation period where I'm slowly kind of getting back used to using gear again. So with the squat suit, that means, going straps down, going half suit, or sometimes it even means going half suit without wraps or just using knee wraps only. But like slowly working my way up, to maybe where I'm 4 weeks out and I'm back in, straps up, full gear, belt, knee wraps. And my body is ready for that. Like my CNS is ready for that after kind of acclimating over a little bit of time of the overload weight and just getting used to like wearing all the weird stuff again. With bench, that means just kind of working down to my chest with different levels of boards over like an 8-week period. I like to touch from 4 weeks out all the way up until the meet. And then with deadlift, I do that a little bit differently recently because you don't really get a lot. Well, I should say most people don't get a lot out of their deadlift suit like in general. I know people who just don't wear deadlift suits because they deadlift more raw. It just doesn't work for them. Or they get like 10 pounds out of it and like, you know what, it's not worth it because it's too painful. And also, like when you're training in a deadlift suit, you don't get a lot of it out of it half suit. So with that one, I'm starting out straps up pretty early, maybe like 6 weeks out, and doing a bunch of singles and doubles with that, just kind of slowly kind of increasing the weight throughout the 8-week cycle. But yeah, I think the whole thing with equipped training is, I think it's different than raw training and programming. I feel like it's hard to kind of do auto regulation with equipped training because like you kind of have to hit like specific numbers at specific times throughout the training cycle in order to be ready for what you want to hit on meet day. And you can't really miss that. Like if you're supposed to hit straps up at 90% one week and you don't hit it or it's not there's not really an opportunity to make that up later on in the cycle or kind of switch things around. Like you have to be on that day. If it's not there, it's not there. You got to move on to the next week. So I think in that type of sense, like I'm a little bit more structured with my equip training and like I'll plan it out 8 weeks out. It's a lot more kind of just like linear progression based, pretty simple, with a little bit of auto regulation if I want to hit a top set throughout the training cycle, kind of week by week. But raw training, you know, I just kind of walk in the gym. I have like a loose structure in my head and just like, how do I feel today? And just kind of hit what I want to hit based on that loose structure.
And do you feel that the equipped lifting makes you a better raw lifter, the raw lifting makes you a better equipped lifter, or it goes both ways? Those things don't have to be mutually exclusive.
I definitely think it goes both ways. I think raw lifting, you know, makes you stronger, like from a base level and a foundational level, which you need as an equipped lifter. Because if you're stronger at your base and foundational level, that means you can just overload that much more when you put on the gear. And I think with equipped lifting, you get used to handling overload weights. So maybe your walkouts might feel a little bit easier. Maybe unracking a bench might feel a little bit easier. Maybe you can hold on to more weight because you train that over an 8-week cycle. But I will say, after doing a bunch of equipped meets, like doing a raw meet, it feels pretty easy. Like it's a lot less stressful. There's just like not as much going on, I think, when you're lifting raw compared to equip. So I think from that sense, it's also like a big difference. And like lifting in so many equip meets, you know, I've heard this from a lot of my friends who lift equip. Like they do raw meets and you're like, yeah, it just feels real chill, which I think is also kind of adds to a perspective of competing.
Where do you think the biggest skill component actually is on the equipped lifts? Do you think which lift do you think has the biggest? If you know how to use your equipment, you'll get the absolute most out of it.
I think that answer would change depending on who you asked. I think somebody with a big ass squat would say squat, and somebody with a big ass bench would say bench. If I try to be as objective as possible, I would say bench, even though I hate it so much. I would definitely say bench because I know guys who can raw bench 385 and then they can work a bench shirt and bench, 700 pounds, 750 pounds. It's because like they just know how to set the shirt. They can squeeze into a tiny ass shirt. They can control that weight all the way to their chest. They know exactly where they hit it. They can hit it in the same spot every single time. And I think like that's the skill part. Like you can hit that bench in the same spot every single time. You can control that shirt where it doesn't collapse you. Like all these little tiny variables, you can control that throughout the lift or it doesn't mess you up. And if you can do that, you can just overload to the moon and bench whatever you want to bench. And I think that's where I've seen the biggest kind of difference between somebody's like raw lift and their equipped lift is definitely bench.
Ian Bell's final meet, his swan song, it will be equipped or raw?
Oh, equipped. Absolutely, equipped. Us What world we don't count raw as lifting sometimes. I don't want to anger the raw people, but we have
It's okay.
They're already mad.
You can,
They're already angry.
they stay mad. Mike, before I ask Ian about Texas and we possibly talk a little bit about some college football as well, do you have anything that you wanted to add, circle back to, anything like that?
Yeah, actually I do. So, you were talking about, basically kind of the support, like the very, very aggressive support, if you will, that the equipment provides. And, obviously being a power lifter, I know that you've had injuries, bumps and bruises along the way. I've heard people say before that they actually, like, despite the fact that it's really uncomfortable, that they can actually train through some things like hip pain. Like I know like Blaine Sumner, like says he basically can't squat raw, but like equipped, he can squat like, 800 plus pounds without a problem. Do you feel like it provides pretty good support, like in some instances, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, I can't squat raw either. Both of my hip labrums are torn, and I haven't been able to squat raw since like 2017 without pain. Um, so equip lifting is really like my only chance to be competitive at a national, international level, and it helps with like the management of my hip. There was a point where like I was training raw, going to worlds and doing all this stuff and trying to get into that. And, it got to the point where like I couldn't sit down in a chair, I couldn't walk. It would hurt, my hip would hurt when I slept and all this stuff. So really backing off on my raw training and really focusing on the gear. And then that allowed me to just focus like on my hip rehab and stuff and getting that back to a level where I could like live without pain and being in constant pain. So yeah, I think that's made a big difference in my life. And I think it definitely helps to be able to train through some injuries and still be able to compete.
Awesome. That's really cool. That's definitely something I'll keep in mind. Obviously it's like a very technical thing, but sometimes, and I'm sure you've dealt with it before, but if you're a power lifter and you're hurt and you're trying to like jam a square peg into a round hole, like by squatting, and it's like, oh, it still hurts. It still hurts. It still hurts. It can be kind of refreshing to like do something different, basically, that doesn't feel quite so terrible. So, maybe for some of you out there who are dealing with that, maybe get a loose pair of like used briefs, like, supportive ones, and like go half suit or something like that, and see if it kind of just lets you train normally for a little bit and kind of lets the hip chill out for a little while, So that's a good thought. I really like that.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of briefs. Anybody that has any type of hip pain or is taking a break from the regular training, like I try to throw briefs at them, just like use this for 6 weeks. I think it helps a lot. It's helped me a lot. It's helped a couple lifters I know a lot. And I think it's even if you mainly compete raw, I think I view those then as like training devices, right? Or training instruments like briefs and slingshots and straps. Like I put all of those in the same category if you're primarily a raw lifter. And I think it's worth using just to kind of change things up or give different, parts of the body a break.
Mike, do you think that maybe he should entertain the possibility that pain is in his mind?
Oh, well, I mean, for sure. It's all in his brain. That's all. You're welcome, by the way. Pain is in your brain. I'm helping. Yeah.
I'll get the invoice. I'll get the invoice sent out before we even finish recording.
Yes, thank you.
Gotcha. All right, let's talk. Strongest state in the continental 48. You've already made your claim that it's Texas, correct?
Absolutely.
Now, who would you put as your second place, or who would you put as contenders to the throne? And are they really contenders or are they pretenders?
You got to throw Wisconsin in there with how strong they are at their high school lifting. They put out a lot of people who've gone to junior worlds and sub-junior worlds. And Taylor LaChapelle, I mean, huge fan. Taylor LaChapelle, I mean, she is a monster. She's been competing at worlds since she was 14. Open worlds since she was 14. I mean, she's a monster. She's going to set all the world records in the 57s. But there's been so many amazing lifters that come out of Wisconsin. Kimmy Johnson. I mean, there's a lot of them. So I put Wisconsin up there. Definitely Louisiana, just like their storied history with collegiate lifting and high school lifting as well. A lot of monsters are kind of Louisiana. And I would say those are the two biggest contenders.
Mike, he forgot about us.
I know.
Why did he leave us off?
I think
Why?
Florida has like a really like old school like OG history. Like one of my favorite lifters is OD Wilson, who's from Florida, who I think my dad competed like in a track meet when he was in high school. But I feel like there's been like a lot of like 80s and like early 90s lifters that were in Florida who were huge and put up. I can't remember the guy. There was a big bencher that came out of Central Florida. But yeah, I haven't seen a lot of people recently coming out of Florida, so that's why I wouldn't put them up there now.
Why do you think that is, Mike? If Florida is known for our disregard for our own health, why can't we dominate a sport like equipped powerlifting?
I don't know. I mean, Wisconsin, I would assume it's like a cheese thing, probably. I did not expect Wisconsin. I was thinking Louisiana in the back of my mind. I was like, I know they've had some people come through there, but yeah, Wisconsin's interesting. I had not thought about them, but you are right. They have had a lot of people, like, now that I think about it. So
let's run the other side of the coin. Who do you think is the weakest state in the
Delaware.
continental 48?
Delaware or Maine.
Yeah, Delaware, Maine, New Hampshire, I guess.
New Hampshire. Yeah, Hampshire.
Hampshire has
No one.
Yeah. So if you're watching this podcast
state.
and you're from Delaware and New Hampshire, just shut the shit off. Because we don't want your view at this point. We don't want your comment. If there's any ad revenue that comes for you, we're sending it back. And buy yourself a pair of goddamn briefs so you can lift something respectable. God, make us sick. All right, our next one. We're setting the clock. I'm going to set us at 5 minutes here. We're going to roast Oklahoma.
5 minutes. 5 minutes. Oh, my Lord. Okay.
5 minutes. And
Wow.
I know, you got to move quick. And A&M. But actually, hold on. Ian, for a second. State your affiliation, please.
I'm a University of Texas Longhorn, twice over. Definitely proud of that. Yeah, through and through.
Perfect.
Okay,
now that
cool.
he has stated his affiliation. So we're going to roast Oklahoma. We're going to roast A&M a little bit here. Now, I'm going to start. I'm going to give you the we'll start with OU. And I'm a Southern Cal fan. We make quarterbacks with punchable faces. OU somehow takes that over the edge. Like Matt Leinart, Barkley, Darnold, those are guys that you just like, you see them in a bar and you just want to smash a beer bottle over their head. But Oklahoma, we got a fuck, marry, kill for you. It's Baker Mayfield, Kyler Murray, Spencer Rattler. The kill, I believe, is obvious. Am I right?
Yeah, you got to kill Spencer Rattler.
Got it.
Have to. I mean, a lot of nicknames from UT fans out there for him. But yeah, I mean, he just looks scary, so you got to kill him. You don't know, I don't know, that face, the hair, the earrings. Got to
the
kill him.
albino-ness.
Yeah, it's too much.
All right.
He was like
so
really. Sorry, I was just gonna point out, he was really, really like rude to his parents a lot on that show too, like the QB1 show or whatever.
I remember that.
Yeah, he was a little brat.
I remember
So
that.
I'm sure he's matured a lot, but still, like, sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, fuck him.
Sorry, got to
All
kill
right.
him.
All right, so we got to marry one and we got to fuck one. Who are you spending the rest of your life with, Ian?
You know, I would marry. I'd marry Baker.
Yeah, I'd probably go with you there.
I think I'd marry Baker. He's the most likable, I think, out of the three for me. Yeah, you know, it's kind of like an underdog story, which, you know, everybody can get behind that. He's a decent dancer. Everybody can get behind that. Yeah, I don't know. He seems the least pretentious, but I don't know. The least pretentious, but also at the same time, the most pretentious. I don't know.
Kyler Murray has to walk underdogs all the time. He's like 2 feet tall. He's an underdog story.
Baker seems like the one that he would most easily roll over and call you daddy. Like, I think I can see that from Baker. I could see that behavior from him a little bit more than Kyler. But like Kyler, that's like not a bad one night stand right there, right? Like that's a good fuck.
Yeah, you can't be mad at that. I think, why I wouldn't want to spend the rest of my life with Kyler just because of him snubbing like our quarterback Ellinger after the OU game after getting beat. Like poor sportsmanship. I can't marry somebody that has poor sportsmanship.
That's true.
You can definitely have a one night stand with that person.
Okay. Mike, you want to make some adjustments there?
Yeah, I think Ian brings up some really compelling points, to be honest. Some things I had not considered. Initially, I was going to say that I thought that Baker had a bit of an attitude problem. It just seems like it'd be like a lot to deal with day in and day out. It just seems kind of exhausting. And that Kyler is much faster than him. And I was just going to say it seems like a good trait to look for in a potential suitor. So
this is a direction that you didn't expect, but I think that you wanted. As a viewer, as a listener, you got this far into the podcast. You earned that last 3 minutes right there. You deserve it, and we're happy to provide it for you. Ian, we want to be respectful of your time. We are coming up on that 1 hour mark. I wanted to give you a chance to plug any projects you've got going on, let the people know where they can find you. The man's wallet is open. Please deposit some cash inside of it. How can they do that?
I don't have too much going on right now. I do have a little clothing company that I run called House of Beef that Mike was generous enough to wear today. So I'm looking to put out some new T-shirts here pretty soon, the next month or two. So with that, I got an Instagram handle. It's at House of Beef USA. But other than that, you can find my stuff at Ian Deadlifts on Instagram. I also want to shout out my sponsor, Titan Support Systems. Always helping me out, giving me the best gear on the planet. But yeah, that's all I got going on.
If you want the gear, you want the apparel, you want to rock the House of Beef, look below. You'll find those links right in the description of the video. Mike, anything you want to say? Anything you want to wrap up with?
I just wanted to say that Texas A&M is also weird.
Yeah.
That's all I have. We don't have to. I still don't. I did a little Google and I couldn't find enough supporting that. I feel comfortable going on the record with that. So
perfect. Yeah, that's with before the recording started. We discussed some things that we will
for legal reasons. This is a joke.
Yeah. Take to our graves with us, right, gentlemen? That blood pact, it's real.
Yeah, it was
Please
real.
Don't say anything. My mom listens to these. All right, guys. Thanks for coming. Thanks for listening. Like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff that you do over here on the YouTubes. We will catch you on the next one. And as always, stay gifted. And we love you. See ya.
That's the part where we flex.
Oh, that was like hemorrhoid face.